Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today I'm excited to talk to Benjamin Stevenson about Everyone This Christmas Has a Secret. Welcome back, Benjamin.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
Yes, it's always so exciting. Every time one of your books comes out, I'm just beyond thrilled because they're a lot of camp and a lot of fun, and they're very, very well done. So, I think to write humor is probably the hardest thing. And you've written a murder and a mystery that's also humorous. So give the audience an overview about what this latest book is about.
Yeah, totally. So the new book, first of all, it's great to be back here a third time with you. I'm wondering if we have any, not overlapping questions necessarily, but in the back of my brain, I'm like, don't, contradict anything that I said last time. So if you say something... If just to the listeners, if I'm talking about how I write or a method or a thing that I do, and it's completely different to the thing I said last time, well, that's just because I have multitudes. So yes, the new book, Everyone This Christmas Has a Secret. It's the third of my Ernest Cunningham detective novels. And Ernest, he's an amateur detective. He kind of keeps stumbling onto murders. And he's a huge fan of Golden Age murder mysteries. And he thinks that if he applies the rules of his favorite fictional detective stories, that he can solve these real life crimes. So this new one, it's the third case that he takes on. And he starts to think, well, every series detective who has more than a couple of cases, well, they're kind of due a holiday special. And that thought coincides with a body being found on December 21st. But the body is in his ex-wife's house. His ex-wife wakes up upstairs covered in her dead partner's blood, and her partner has been murdered downstairs in the kitchen. He's written the word Christmas on the floor in blood, and she hasn't been downstairs. He hasn't been upstairs. She says, I just went to bed and woke up in the morning covered in blood. She's caught literally red-handed and arrested, and she calls Ernest in to come and clear her name. Her partner worked behind the scenes at a theatre which was doing a major charity fundraiser headlined by an international magician. So Ernest goes backstage at the theatre to find his suspects, and all of them are involved in the magic show. Hypnotists, illusionists, magician's assistants, identical twins. Everyone who is a professional in the art of deception is Ernest's suspect. So how can he find a murderer when a good murderer is really just like a good magician, and a good murder is just like a good magic trick? And that's Ernest's puzzle for this book.
And it's so fun. I mean, of course you set it up. Ernest gives us insights all along the way. I mean, Ernest talks to the audience. He breaks the fourth wall continually. It's not like... Well, and I would say, so Ernest lets us in on his thoughts. Maybe not just break the fourth wall, but we're in it with Ernest. We're invested because Ernest makes us be invested by giving us clues along the way and explaining how the mystery works. I heard an author the other day of thrillers on a different podcast, and she was saying, every book has a particular formula to it. On page 80, the exact same thing doesn't have to happen in every murder mystery book, but somewhere along the way, there has to be deceptions and clues and red herrings. And is the narrator reliable or unreliable? Ernest is so fun because if he bungles, we're in it with him because he shares all of his thoughts. I don't know if I've asked you before, was there a particular inspiration from Ernest, or why this particular type of a detective, besides to entertain Dan and the audience?
There's two reasons that Ernest is direct for the audience. Well, there's three, and the third is just that I find it fun. But there's kind of a few technical reasons, and one is exactly as you say, that every book has a formula, right? And we're talking murder mysteries here. The tenets that you kind of speak about, the second ad break murder, that death that comes about a third of the way through a book, etc. All these kind of things are formulaic in the novels. not only are they formulaic, but they also kind of have to happen for the novel to be satisfying. Because if they don't happen, then you start to feel like, well, what is happening in this novel? I wanted, I needed that genre beat in order to enjoy it. So the readers are kind of expecting the formula while you also don't want to be formulaic. So the solution for that is a character that understands the formula himself. And so then he can talk you through the place that you're at in the narrative. And in doing that, have you acknowledge the formula and therefore subvert it. So simple stuff like everyone's phones are obviously going to run out of battery here. We're trapped in an isolated location, etc. And Ernest will just take you through that straight up the top. And what it does is it shortcuts a lot of the formula and it gives you that satisfying beat. But then I'm able to operate the whole mystery on a kind of secondary or elevated level where I treat the author's intelligence with respect and I say, you know how these books are supposed to go. And so let's do all of that stuff quickly. And now let's get into the really fun, complex stuff that is, it's advanced physics, not physics 101. We're entering at the top level of crime solving here. So I'm bringing you along for the ride. The other reason is that Ernest it's a fair play murder mystery, and fair play murder mysteries present all of their clues to the reader. But the fair play murder mysteries of the Golden Age, they're often narrated by a scribe. So Watson narrates Holmes. Now, Holmes therefore presents all of his clues to Watson, and then Watson, who is dumber than the reader, presents all of his clues to the reader. So there's a filter there. So in my books, the scribe and the sleuth are the same person. So in order to present the clues, he must tell you everything straight away. So a good example is Holmes will look at a flower or something and it'll be an obscure South American poison, and he'll know that. And what he'll do is he'll show the flower to Watson, and then Watson will write down, Holmes picked up a flower, right? Holmes already knows what it means. Watson doesn't, therefore the reader doesn't. It's still fair play. You've been shown the clue. But in my books, Ernest picks up a flower. If he knows it's a poison, he has to tell you straight away it's a poison. So again, I've got to get the twist from like a new area, which hopefully kind of subverts it. So the gap of the gap between the writer and the sleuth is completely level in this book. And that's why Ernest has to do it in first person and has to kind of chat away with the reader. And then the third reason, like I said, it's fun. My books, they're inviting you to play the game, and I need a narrator whose job it is to invite you in. So every time he says, hey, have a look at this, it's a clue, that's me saying, come and play. Let's, in the second book, everyone is trained as a suspect. He's absolutely forthright with one of the words in the book. He says straight up the top, this is an anagram and it will help me solve the crime. Now, you can go away and try and solve that anagram. I hope I've made it difficult enough that it will actually be challenging. But also, you could just type it into Google if you really wanted. But he's inviting you to play in the way that you're going to have fun playing. For any first-time readers as well, don't worry. I do just explain everything in the book. There is a final chapter where I just tell you everything. I don't just leave it for you to solve. But that's why he's in first person, because he's saying, hey, here's the puzzle. Come solve it with me.
Well, and what you do, Benjamin, is you invite us along with enough humor in Ernest that we really want to see him succeed. Occasionally with Holmes, I really often wanted him to fail because I felt like he was so much smarter than me. And that became a little difficult for me sometimes because I felt like, well, am I ever going to be able to catch up with you? I always felt like with Sherlock Holmes that I was always surprised. Christie is my favorite. And with Christie, I had a 50-50 shot at it. And so with Ernest, because I'm Ernest's sidekick, I always have to win. And I know I will win because Ernest and I are going to do this. And I think it's a very novel trick that you've utilized, which makes reading your book so much fun.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, I think some purists out there, I'm not going to, stand by this.
Oh, go on and tell it, Benjamin. Go and tell all the dirt. I know
if anybody corrects me, that is fine. I'm happy to be had on that. But Holmes is not strictly fair play. And I think it's a little bit before that. And some of the mysteries are unsolvable. You can't solve them. Whereas, into Poirot, then it is much more fair play, much more direct. But I think that one of the things with my books is I want you to solve it. Hopefully I've made it challenging, but 10% of people should be able to solve my books. And if 10% of people can't, then I've made it too hard and I haven't made it fair. But also, you're on the team. So I want to trick you, but I want to trick you in a way that feels good and not in a way that where you think, don't, he kind of fooled me, but I don't really feel good about it. So I want everybody to get 30% of the mystery. So I want you to figure out why it happened, but you don't know who did it. I want you to figure out how it happened, but you don't know why or who. Or sometimes I don't care if you pick who did it. If you have no idea how or why they did it, then you haven't really solved the mystery either. But what you get is you get a little bit of smug satisfaction. That's what I'm looking for. I want you to be smug. I want you to be like, I got that clue. I knew that was important. And then you get this little nice feeling of I did well here. And then the next twist fools you and you go, oh, but I missed that one. And that feels good. And so I want that. And that only happens in a kind of team environment where I do give you some clues and, want you to feel like I want you to feel like you've played a competitive game with me. I want to win. Don't get me wrong. I want to win, but I want you to feel like you've played. I don't want you to feel like you've, played tennis against Venus Williams and lost every point.
Couldn't even connect with the ball at all.
Yeah.
You just watched the ball whiz past either shoulder. Yeah, I totally agree. Because that's
exactly. And that's, with watching it whiz past, some of the home stories are a little like that. So I take your point there. Yeah.
Yeah, and for anybody that's listening, this is not my first time saying that Christy was my favorite author when I was a teenager, and then I've read, I think, every book she's written multiple times, and sometimes I still don't remember who done it. Sometimes I do, but the thing is, with Christy, I feel, especially with Marple, she was so inviting. With you, everybody had a grandmother, unless they both passed away prematurely. So, I felt like with Marple, I was along with my grandmother who was going to be nosy and ask questions and stuff. And I felt very comfortable there. And I think that's sort of the same feeling I get with Ernest. You want to have a beer with Ernest. And I also think that, Ernest would sell all of his friends on a multi-level marketing thing, and they'd all go along with him because he's the kind of person you really do want to succeed, and I like that.
Yeah, well, I think having a beer with him is exactly kind of where it came from. Was when I wrote the first book, Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. I came up with the title first, and then I kind of thought, that's a really good title. I should write a book to match this title. And then I thought, okay, well, what makes this title special? And genuinely just a flash of inspiration where I wrote down the 7 words in the title and thought, right, this title is calling to me. It's fun. So what makes it special? And I kind of looked at each individual word in the title in the way that it came to me. And simple stuff, practical, boring, technical stuff, like the fact that it's called Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, not everyone in my family has murdered someone. It's important to the plot because there's a difference between killing and murder. But the reason it's killed is because killed has a hard K, which is a more emphatic consonant, which in stand-up comedy, that's why comedians say the F words, because hard consonants kind of give more emotion. So I was like, okay, well, it's got to be this. And so then that dictates the type of book I'm writing because I've chosen the word killed because it rolls off the tongue better. And now it's dictated the entire narrative of the novel. Simple stuff like that. And so the word my was in the title. And my said this book's in first person, which Golden Age mysteries aren't often in. So I thought, okay, it's in first person. So who is this guy? And that's quite an audacious title. And maybe this is a guy who's sat down at a bar next to you with a beer. And the first thing he said is, everyone in my family has killed someone. And then that's his story. And so he is, from the very start of it, he's a guy sitting next to you in a bar telling you his story is always in my head.
I love that. And if anyone asked me what my podcast is about, I say, well, it's like 2 people sitting on a bar stool having a conversation. I'm not going to be the hardest questionnaire, but at the same time, I'm hoping to ask good, interesting questions. But it's a conversation. I like to be in it together rather than be opposing.
Well, I definitely feel like I'm at a bar with you, even across.
Well, and anyone who knows me knows I'm at plenty of them. So yes, anytime I'll buy the first round. How's that?
Oh, great deal.
So, of your secondary characters or your supporting cast, did you have a favorite one to write in this particular book?
Yeah, so it was really fun because all of the suspects, as I said, they're people who, because they work in magic shows and they're related to kind of magic, trickery, hypnotism, illusionists, all these things. They're things that don't belong in Golden Age mysteries, and they're things that Ernest doesn't believe in. He doesn't believe in hypnotism. So when he has to interview a hypnotist and ask them, does hypnotism work? It was a lot of fun to write. But one of the things that was really fun, and my favorite part of this book, was the book features identical twins, and that is pretty much outlawed in Golden Age detective fiction. And the reason it's outlawed is to prevent from the, they swapped the whole time kind of twist. Now, the thing is, I am an identical twin. I have an identical twin brother. His name is James. And I was just kept doing interviews that people kept asking me, you keep saying you can't use identical twins in your book, and you're a charlatan in real life because you are an identical twin. And so I thought, I'm going to use identical twins in this book and make it fair. And so this isn't a spoiler, but as soon as Ernest introduced them, he says, I know these aren't allowed. I know these aren't allowed because the problem is that they're going to switch later and then you'll complain that I didn't tell you and it wasn't fair. So to prevent that, I'm just going to tell you right now that they're going to switch later. And now that you know that they're going to switch, you're on the level. And so that was a really fun kind of way of working with it. But I loved including identical twins in this book because I'd never done it before.
So I do have, so I'm going to sort of make fun of you. I noticed your mom and dad didn't go for the whole rhyming name thing, like Ronnie and Donnie and Lonnie. So are your middle names rhyming or not?
No, not at all. No, I think they made an effort to consciously distance us. We had to wear bracelets when we were up until we were 6 months old. I had a blue one and James had a pink one because they couldn't tell us apart. And so there is a high chance that we did in fact get mixed up sometime in our early months when those bracelets came off. And I've actually been James my whole life and I don't even know it. There is a chance that happened.
And I think that's fair. I actually, at one point in my life, worked for 2 sets of identical twins, one in the morning, one during the day, and I did a part-time job at night for another set. And it's just it's a unique thing because I often hear people say I can't tell them apart, and I'm like, you didn't spend more than 5 minutes with them, did you? I mean, because even identical twins have a quirk or they have something about them. For instance, the nighttime ones, one of them had a slightly larger gap between his 2 front teeth than the other one did. So I'm like, there's always something. But I think when you're babies, I can honestly see that would be difficult.
Yeah, we're identical, but age, we don't look exactly the same anymore. When we were 15, we looked exactly the same. But the other thing, you're right, it's about spending time with them. I mean, if you stood in a room with me and my brother and just looked at us, maybe you might get us confused. But if you talked to either one of us for 5 minutes, not only could you tell us apart, but you would be able to tell that James is the older brother and I am the younger brother. Like, you just know.
Yes.
There's older brother energy all over my bro, and I'm younger brother energy all over it too. So it's funny when people get us confused because I'm like, we are completely different, and you can tell where we stand in the relationship, not even who we are.
Oh, that's so cool. And for anyone listening, they can find you at the Stevenson Experience, right?
Yes, we do stand-up comedy together. Mild language warning, slightly more swearing in the stand-up comedy than there is in my books.
There you go. Yes, actually, your books are really quite tame in that regards.
I think when you're writing comedy, it's really interesting. Comedy is about word economy and using, the minimum words to get the maximum meaning across. Like, that's kind of as a stand-up comic, that's how you develop a joke. You go to an open mic night, you tell a joke, it's 20 words, it gets a laugh. You go again the next night, you tell it again and do it in 15, it gets a laugh. You go again and do it in 12, it doesn't get a laugh. Okay, 12's too few, we need 15. So it's kind of, it's whittling it down so that there's no wasted words. And one of the wasted words, and I'm guilty of this when I do stand-up, is swearing. It's a crutch to kind of give give a reaction or give a response. And on stage, it's kind of, if it's casual conversation or it's kind of, peppering the thing, it doesn't kind of impact it too much. But if you're using it for every punchline, that's when stand-up comedy gets quite stale. So when I wrote these books, I kind of deliberately set out to, I don't swear a lot I published a couple of books before in Australia, before I wrote the Ernest Cunningham mysteries. I didn't swear a lot, but I swore casually like an Australian, I would say. And so I quite deliberately in these books, I thought, the golden age, and there's humor. And I don't want to use the crutch of language to try and emphasize the humor. So I need to find the humor another way to try and make it better. And I think it worked. It made the comedy much stronger. And then I don't even think of it. The first book I deliberately tried, and now I don't even think about it. I think I don't need a swear word here to make this line funny or this person catty or toxic.
Absolutely.
It's quite easy to do it without it. So why would I put it in? If it's a wasted word, I got no problem with swearing. And some of my characters swear a little bit. But if it's a wasted word, it shouldn't be in there, whether it's a swearing or whether it's an adverb or whatever. Right. So that's fine by me.
It's a big pet peeve of mine, and I do share this often, is, if the sky is blue, let it be blue. I don't need 17 descriptive words for the word blue. Just let the sky be blue and move on. I get the picture of the sky is blue. If it's nighttime, I might have a shade of how dark it is. Is the moon out? The stars out? Is it cloud covered? You get the feeling from an economy of words. If it's something that goes on for 3 pages describing how blue it was outside, it's like you lost me after the third description. So, and that.
Oh, sorry, I just have to rewrite a page in my new book. No, I totally agree. I mean, it's about the people in the room, not what the room looks like to me. If there's something really important, like a locked door or something, you have to describe the environment so that it's going to add to the plot. But it's about the people inside that space. So it doesn't, and I'm the same thing with character descriptions. Actually, my first draft, it's kind of all voice, not all voice, but my characters are very defined by the way that they speak, and I can picture them intimately. And, the way they talk to each other kind of builds their characters. And then my editor will often say, how old is this person? And I say, I don't really know.
Is it important?
30 and 40. And then they say, and what color is their hair? And I'm like, does that matter? Are they a jerk?
Right,
or are they kind and empathetic? These are things that aren't defined by their hair color. So I don't care about their hair color. And then I put it in, obviously you want the book to kind of speak visually to people. But when I write, it's kind of the last thing I think about is how tall is that person? How skinny is that person, etc. It's the same as the weather. Like if it's not adding to the book, then I shouldn't linger on it.
Totally agree. All right. So now I want to test your OCD.
Okay.
Could you eat an advent calendar out of order?
Normally I would answer this question with an emphatic no, but we just had an advent calendar and ate it all in a day because it was given to me as a gift, because the book itself is an advent calendar. Everyone, this Christmas is a secret. It's 23 chapters. It's 24 chapters. There's 23 clues in each of the first chapters, and then the 24th gives you the killer. So the idea was if you picked it up on December 1st, you read a chapter a day and then you solve the murder on Christmas Eve, which a lot of people have been doing and sending me messages of, and it's really, really fun. But now, I'm not sure when this goes to air, but whoever picks up this book after listening to this, you're just going to have to eat all the chocolates at once.
Push through. We're going to be out on Monday the 23rd, so they have time to finish the advent calendar before Christmas.
Yeah, you got 2 days. So But I've been doing a lot of kind of talks and events, and often people, they'll give you like a library will give you like a scented candle or a bottle of wine or a box of chocolates. But everyone this year has been giving me advent calendars, which is really cute and thoughtful, and I love it. But it just means that we just rip them open and just eat the whole things. So I'm a new convert to the guzzling of the advent calendar.
I love it. A friend of mine gave me one last year, and it had gotten damaged in shipping, so you couldn't open any door without the entire face of it coming off. So I just started eating them. I'm like, you know what? Because typically I have everything needs to be alphabetized or numerical. So if it says 1, 2, 3, I go 1, 2, 3. It's who I am. I just can't help myself. But I did want to know about that, so I love it.
Well, when we were kids, because I have a sister as well, so there were 3 kids. And we shared an advent calendar. So it was, I was day 1 and 4 and 7, my counting just got the better of me. And the day that was yours was sacred. Like, nobody better open your door, because that's my day. I've waited 3 days for this slightly terrible tasting chocolate.
I totally agree. I do think that some of the finer chocolatiers to the plate. We have one here there's one whiskey distiller that has advent calendar of different flavor whiskeys that they make. I'm like, oh, that would be,
I love that.
Yeah, me too. It was just ridiculously priced because it came in a very fancy box. I was like, okay, fine, I'll just buy a bottle. It'll be easier.
Yeah, I'll just do a personal shot a day.
That works.
And then also, whatever. I drank the whole bottle. That's how I do advent calendars.
That's right. Whoopsie. Again, the book is Everyone This Christmas Has a Secret. Benjamin, this was the third Ernest Cunningham that I just absolutely enjoyed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for reading. And I'm really glad you enjoyed it. One of the fun things about these books is that now I'm 3 books in, Ernest has to become a better detective, because my readers are becoming better readers. Not better readers generally, but I'm teaching you how to solve the way that I write each time. So I hope I've delivered a more complex mystery than the last 2, and going into the 4th book, hopefully more complex again. So I'm really glad you enjoyed it.
I did indeed, and I'm looking forward to book number 4. Go get writing. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at OutWithDan.com, on Twitter at OutWithDan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.